San Francisco, California. Autumn of 1972, the narrow alley in the heart of Chinatown had been transformed into a controlled chaos of filmmaking. Morning fog rolled in from the bay, weaving between the fire escapes and neon signs that lined the cramped street, giving the scene an almost dreamlike quality. The smell of fresh dim sum drifted from nearby restaurants, mixing with the sharp scent of fog and the distant salt air of the Pacific. Somewhere beyond the production barriers, a cable car bell clanged its familiar rhythm. A reminder that the real San Francisco continued its daily life just meters away from this manufactured reality. Golden Harvest. Productions had secured permits to film in this authentic Chinatown location, and over 50 crew members now occupied every available inch of space. Cameras on rolling platforms, portable lighting rigs that hummed with electricity, sound equipment wrapped in blankets to muffle the city noise. The machinery of cinema had invaded this historic neighborhood. Red lanterns swayed overhead in the gentle breeze, their color matching the occasional flash of a crew member's jacket as they rushed between positions. At the center of this organized madness stood Bruce Lee at 32 years old. Bruce was on the verge of becoming the biggest action star in the world. His physique, honed to sculptural perfection, was visible even beneath the simple black shirt he wore between takes. His eyes scanned the assembled stuntmen with an intensity that made several of them look away. Perfectionism radiated from him like heat from a furnace. Every detail mattered. Every movement had to be exact. Every punch had to look real, because to Bruce Lee, authenticity was not optional. Among the crowd of stuntmen waiting for their moment on camera, one young man stood out, not for his size or his presence, but for the hungry way his eyes followed Bruce Lee's every movement. Jackie Chan was 18 years old, barely more than a boy, with a face that still carried the softness of youth beneath the determination in his expression. He had arrived in San Francisco 3 days earlier, part of a group of Hong Kong stuntmen brought in to fill out the fight sequences. His body was compact, wiry, conditioned by 15 brutal years of Peking Opera training that had begun when he was just 7 years old. The Peking Opera school had been a crucible. Beatings for imperfect technique, sleepless nights, practicing until muscles screamed for mercy. A philosophy hammered into young minds through pain. A true performer never shows weakness, never admits defeat, never breaks character, no matter how much it hurts. Jackie Chan had been forged in that fire, and he wore his toughness like armor. If you want to discover what happened when this young stuntman challenged the man who would become his greatest inspiration, and learn the lesson that would shape one of cinema's most legendary careers, stay until the end of this story. You won't regret it. The morning had been frustrating for everyone. Director Lo Wei had called for take after take of a sequence where Bruce would dispatch 3 attackers in rapid succession. The choreography was precise. Bruce had designed it himself, but something wasn't working. The stuntmen were reacting too slowly, too dramatically, too falsely. Their falls looked staged. Their impacts looked painless. The footage, Lo Wei complained, looked like what it was, a movie. Cut. The director shouted for the 11th time, his patience fraying visibly. The reactions are wrong. It looks fake. We need authenticity. Bruce Lee stood in the center of the alley, barely breathing hard despite having thrown dozens of techniques. His expression was calm, but his eyes betrayed his frustration. He knew what the problem was. The stuntmen were trained to take pulled punches, to anticipate the choreography, to fall on cue. They were professionals doing professional work. But professional wasn't good enough for Bruce Lee. During the break, Jackie Chan edged closer to where Bruce stood, reviewing the latest footage on a small monitor. The young stuntman's heart pounded in his chest, but his face remained impassive. Another gift from his opera training. He had been watching Bruce move all morning, and what he saw both thrilled and confused him. Bruce's techniques were nothing like what Jackie had learned. No flowery movements, no theatrical poses, just pure, direct, devastatingly efficient motion. But Jackie had also noticed something else. The senior stuntmen, men with decades of experience, seemed almost afraid of Bruce. They flinched before his strikes even arrived. They created distance when they should have pressed close. And Jackie, with the arrogance that only an 18-year-old can possess, thought he knew why. They were soft. They had been in the movie business too long, taking fake hits and collecting paychecks. They had forgotten what real impact felt like. Jackie Chan had not forgotten, The Peking Opera masters had hit him with wooden swords, with bamboo canes, with bare fists that held nothing back. He had been kicked, thrown, and beaten into excellence. Real pain was an old friend. These movie stuntmen, Jackie thought with the contempt of youth, knew nothing about real pain. Bruce turned at the sound of the accented English. His eyes found Jackie, just another young stuntman, indistinguishable from a dozen others. Yes, Jackie bowed slightly, a gesture of respect drilled into him since childhood. I have been watching the takes. The problem is not the choreography. The problem is that the stuntmen are anticipating your strikes. They react before you hit them because they are afraid of real contact. Bruce's eyebrow rose slightly. The analysis was astute for someone so young. And you have a solution. Use me for the next take. Jackie's voice was steady despite his racing heart. I am trained in Peking Opera. I have been hit by masters since I was 7 years old. I can take real contact. You don't need to pull your punches with me. A murmur rippled through the nearby stuntmen. Several exchanged knowing glances. They had seen eager young performers make similar boasts before. Usually, the reality of Bruce Lee's speed quickly cured such confidence. Bruce studied the young man with renewed interest. There was something in his posture, a solidity, that spoke of genuine training. You want me to hit you for real? Yes, Mr. Lee. I can handle anything. Real hits will make the scene look authentic. You understand that my techniques are designed for actual combat. Even controlled, they carry significant force. Jackie smiled, the confidence of youth blazing in his eyes. With respect, Mr. Lee, I have taken hits from masters who trained under the imperial court. My body has been conditioned for 15 years. I am not like these others. The other stuntmen bristled at the implied insult, but none spoke up. The young man was about to learn a lesson they had already absorbed, that Bruce Lee operated on a level none of them fully understood. Bruce was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes evaluating Jackie with an intensity that made the young man want to look away. But Jackie held his ground. He had survived a decade and a half of opera training. He would not be intimidated by a look. Very well, Bruce finally said, but first, a demonstration. I want to see how you take a hit. He gestured to one of the senior stuntmen, a thick-bodied man named Wang who had been doing movie fights since before Jackie was born. Wang hit him. Chest, full contact. Wang looked surprised but nodded. He stepped toward Jackie, set his stance, and delivered a solid punch to the young man's chest. The impact echoed in the alley, a clean hit with real force behind it. Jackie absorbed it without moving. His feet stayed planted, his expression unchanged. He had taken far worse at the opera school. A small smile crossed his lips. You see, Mr. Lee? I am not like the others. Hit me for real. I can take it. Several crew members had stopped their work to watch. The energy in the alley had shifted. Everyone sensed that something significant was about to happen. Even director Lo Wei had emerged from behind his monitor, curious about the commotion. Bruce Lee nodded slowly. There was no anger in his expression, no desire to punish the young man's arrogance. If anything, there was something like appreciation. Courage was rare, even if it was courage born from ignorance. Stand ready, Bruce said softly. Jackie planted his feet in a solid stance. The same stance that had absorbed Wang's punch without effect. He tightened his core, engaged his conditioning, prepared his body the way he had been trained. He was ready for impact. He was ready for pain. He was ready to prove himself. He was not ready for what came next. Bruce Lee's movement was invisible. There was no wind-up, no telegraph, no shifting of weight that Jackie's trained eyes could detect. One instant Bruce stood relaxed. The next instant, his fist connected with Jackie's chest. The sensation was unlike anything Jackie had ever experienced. It wasn't like being punched. It was like being struck by a wave, by something that passed through his surface and disrupted everything beneath. His carefully prepared stance meant nothing. His 15 years of conditioning meant nothing. His feet left the ground. His body flew backward. And before his mind could process what was happening, he crashed into a stack of equipment cases, 3 meters behind his starting position. The sound of the impact silenced the entire alley. 50 crew members stood frozen. Even the distant cable car bells seemed to pause. Jackie lay among the scattered equipment, unable to breathe. His lungs had forgotten how to function. His chest felt not painful exactly, but wrong, as if his internal organs had been rearranged by the force. Tears streamed from his eyes involuntarily, not from emotion, but from pure physical shock. His body was experiencing something it had no framework to understand. For 15 years, Jackie Chan had believed he knew what a real hit felt like. In 3 seconds, Bruce Lee had erased that certainty entirely. Bruce walked over and looked down at the young stuntman with an expression that held no mockery, only patient understanding. "Can you breathe?" Jackie tried to respond, but could only manage a gasping wheeze. "Take your time. The diaphragm is shocked. It will pass." Slowly, painfully, Jackie's lungs remembered their function. Air entered in ragged gasps. His vision, which had begun to blur at the edges, gradually cleared. He became aware of the concerned faces of crew members gathered around him, of the fog still drifting overhead, of the surreal reality that he, Jackie Chan, survivor of Peking Opera training, had been completely devastated by a single blow, that Jackie finally managed to whisper, his voice barely audible. That was not full power, was it? Bruce Lee smiled gently. That was perhaps 10%. Any more would have caused real injury. 10%. 10% had launched him 3 meters through the air. 10% had bypassed every defense he thought he had. Jackie's mind reeled, trying to calculate what full power would mean, and couldn't. The numbers didn't make sense. The physics didn't make sense. Nothing he had ever learned about combat made sense anymore. Bruce extended his hand. Jackie grasped it and allowed himself to be pulled to his feet. His legs wobbled, uncertain if they could be trusted. "I don't understand," Jackie said, his voice still weak. "How is that possible? I've been hit by masters my whole life. None of them. Nothing has ever. Your opera training conditioned you to absorb surface impact," Bruce explained patiently. "Blows that push against your body. You learned to root yourself, to distribute force through your structure. This is valuable conditioning." He paused. "But my strike does not push. It penetrates. The energy passes through your external resistance and disrupts your internal structure. No amount of surface conditioning can protect against that." Jackie listened with the intensity of someone whose entire worldview had just collapsed and was desperate to rebuild it on new foundations. Can that be learned? Everything can be learned by those willing to empty their cup first. Bruce's eyes held Jackie's gaze. "You came to me full of certainty. Certain of your toughness. Certain of your conditioning. Certain that you knew what a real hit felt like." He gestured to the scattered equipment. "How certain are you now?" "I know nothing," Jackie whispered. And for the first time, the admission brought not shame, but relief. If he knew nothing, then everything was possible. If his cup was empty, it could be filled with something real. Bruce nodded, something like approval flickering in his expression. "That is the first true thing you've said today. Most men, after an experience like this, would make excuses. They would protect their ego. They would convince themselves it was a trick, a lucky shot, something other than what it was. Reality, pure and simple. The reality of what human beings are capable of when they train not for performance, but for truth." Bruce placed a hand on Jackie's shoulder. "You have courage. You approached me when others wouldn't. You stood ready to receive what you believed would be a powerful blow. Courage like that is the foundation of all real learning." Jackie felt something shift in his chest, not the lingering shock of the strike, but something deeper, an awakening, a door opening onto a path he hadn't known existed. "I want to learn," Jackie said, his voice stronger now. "Not opera techniques, not movie choreography. I want to understand what you just did, how you move, how you generate that power." Bruce studied him for a long moment. Around them, the film crew had begun to return to their work, sensing that the confrontation had resolved into something else entirely. But Jackie and Bruce remained in their own world, teacher and student recognizing each other for the first time. "Learning requires sacrifice," Bruce said finally. "You would have to question everything you think you know. Every technique you've practiced for 15 years would have to be examined, tested, possibly discarded. Many people find that price too high." "I just felt what I thought I knew get destroyed in 1 second, Jackie replied. "What's left to sacrifice? My certainty is already gone." Bruce smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. "Then watch, listen, ask questions. I cannot take you as a formal student. My time is limited, and my path is my own. But I can show you doors. Walking through them will be your choice." For the remainder of the production, Jackie Chan became Bruce Lee's shadow. He watched every take with new eyes, seeing not just the choreography, but the principles beneath it. He observed how Bruce moved from his center, how he eliminated unnecessary motion, how every technique served a purpose beyond looking impressive. He asked questions during breaks, questions that Bruce answered with patience and depth that surprised everyone who witnessed their interactions. The scene that had caused so much trouble that foggy morning was eventually completed with different stuntmen. But something far more important had been captured that day, not on film, but in the consciousness of a young man who would one day become a legend in his own right, years later. After Bruce Lee's tragic death in 1973, Jackie Chan would emerge as one of the most innovative action stars in cinema history. His style was different from Bruce's, more comedic, more acrobatic, more willing to show vulnerability and pain. But those who understood both men could see Bruce's influence woven through everything Jackie did. The efficiency of movement, the authenticity of impact, the understanding that real power comes not from muscles, but from focused intention. In countless interviews throughout his career, Jackie Chan would speak of that day in San Francisco with reverence that time never diminished. "I was 18 years old and thought I was tough," Jackie would say, his voice carrying the wisdom of experience. "I had survived the opera school. I thought I knew what pain was. Then Bruce Lee hit me with 10% of his power, and I realized I knew nothing." He would pause, a smile crossing his face. "That moment was the greatest gift anyone ever gave me. He didn't just show me what real power was, he showed me how much I had left to learn. And that made everything that came after possible." When asked what lesson he took from Bruce Lee, Jackie's answer was always the same: empty your cup. No matter how much you think you know, no matter how hard you've trained, no matter how tough you believe you are, stay humble. Stay open, because somewhere out there is someone who can teach you that everything you believe is just the beginning. The fog-shrouded alley in San Francisco's Chinatown has changed little in the decades since that autumn morning. Tourists still walk those narrow streets, taking photos beneath the same style of red lanterns that swayed overhead when a young stuntman learned the most important lesson of his life. Most of them have no idea that on this spot, two future legends met, one at the height of his powers, one just beginning his journey, and that a single punch changed the trajectory of martial arts, cinema forever. If this story inspired you to stay humble and never stop learning, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that true strength begins with admitting what you don't know. Leave a comment telling us about a moment when you discovered that everything you believed was just the starting point. We'll see you in the next video with more incredible stories from the world of martial arts.